get started here. I have a couple of questions that a lot of our alumni often ask us about. And the first one right out of the gate is you've had all these successes but at some point or another, there was probably something that happened that just didn't work out the way you had hoped. And I don't like to use the word failure, but we all, if we're wise and look back on our path, we do indeed see things as like, boy, if I want a do-over on that one. Do you have one in particular that stands out that might have been a turning point for your learning or your career thinking, or how did you manage it? And if you could describe the experience, and then what did you do?
Yeah, and I love how you said it too, because I think it's about reframing the experience and the lessons learned. However, I will say, like, I have failed so much. and I think that's important, actually, because what I have come to realize is if we're not failing is probably because we're not putting ourselves out there and like really stretching beyond our comfort or safe zone. And so to me, I have more than, I'd say, embraced failure and what it brings to us. And as I have been learning a lot about mindset, really embracing a growth mindset, as Carol Dweck, explains in her book, Mindset, has become something that's very important to me. And also, as she explains, how ingrained sometimes a fixed mindset is for women, and how personally we can take failures as a reflection of us not being good enough, and rather than like a learning opportunity. I've actually changed how I parent my daughter too, just because I believe in this so greatly and so deeply.
Everything's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, to your point, I can now go back, and I would encourage people listening in to go back and think through, like, what do you think are those big failure moments? And there's a couple that come to mind that I can share. But now, in hindsight, looking back at it, can we find the gift in that failure, like the lesson learned?
Yes.
And sometimes, to me, the really big failures that felt so disastrous, like in the moment, were either big gifts or sometimes a redirection that I didn't even know I needed, and to me, the biggest one that comes to mind, because it completely crushed me, was actually I was getting ready to apply for colleges in Brazil. And the process there is very different in the sense than that you basically study for a couple years and you take this one national exam. The exam is for specific colleges, right? So like if I really want to get into like Indiana University, like I have to study for like 2 years, and you test me on like everything that I should have learned like throughout all of high school. So it's like super intense. And there was this one university in Brazil that was like the best business school. And to me, like, that's it. Like I needed to get into that school. If I didn't get into that school, like my entire future that I had been dreaming since I was a little girl was like over. Like I had created this whole drama, an attachment to the outcome in my head, and was super stressed about it. Like to the point that I remember I had gotten so many canker sores in my mouth because I was so nervous that my mom had to take me to the hospital to get like IV because I couldn't even eat. Like it was that bad. And now knowing what I know about mindset, not shockingly, I didn't do that well in the exam, and I didn't get in. And the worst thing is, like, back at that time, I'm going to sound like an old lady, but they used to print the results of this exam on like the national newspaper, like name by name of like who made it in. And so like my failure became like, was like known to everybody, and everybody knew because that's what I wanted, because I've been studying like crazy for 2 years. So it not only felt like this huge disappointment for myself and like all these years I had invested in what that meant for my career,
right,
but also like I felt like I let my family down, my friends down.
But really, you had the whole weight of the world on you.
I felt like this was like the end of my life, and I was like 18, But I remember it was so bad. I was really devastated that my mom, being, I don't know, so wise, took me to my happy place, which is the beach. And just like had me disconnect, from everything. And we just spent a few days at the beach. And I don't know why, one of my friends recommended this book to me called The Alchemist from Paulo Coelho. It's like an amazing book. It's like my favorite book. And I read that book during the beach, and it completely changed my life and my path and like my view on what happened and like what I wanted to do moving forward. It was insane. It was like a complete transformation. And from that, I realized that I had zoomed in so deeply, and I was so attached to what I thought the outcome of this thing was and what it meant to me as as a person. I felt like I was broken and not good enough and not worthy because I didn't pass this one exam in this one school, out of all the schools in the whole world, right? I had my total blinders on. And this book just opened up my mind, and I started to think about it. I was like, you know what? I had actually always wanted to go to the US for college. I always thought it was going to be for my MBA, but maybe I could explore what that could look like, from an undergrad standpoint. So all of a sudden, my mind had opened up to sort of new possibilities, and a path that I didn't even know existed sort of started to form up. And then things moved so quickly. It just fluid so nicely. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I was moving to...
And here it goes. And next thing you know, you're unpacking your bags in Bloomington.
Yeah, but had I not, now that's why, in hindsight, I can look back, right? And even though in the moment it felt like such a blow, right? And all of that, now I see the gift and the redirection, and how much from my life wouldn't have been possible, had that happened that way. Right. But I think it's really about it's thinking about those quote unquote failure, as you said, as not necessarily failure in terms of a bad thing. It's not to be Pollyanna and not take the lesson, right? If we mess up, you learn, you get better, you move on. But it's to know that it doesn't change us, it doesn't define how incredible we can be and how amazing our careers can be and all that we can learn and grow when something doesn't go the way we expect it.
Yeah, no, that's really let me ask this, with that foundation, so now you get into your career and you graduate, and again, I think one of the things why people ask us about this a lot is that if you go to Facebook or you go to anything, and there's a lot of publicity about this, right? That all you see is the good stuff.
Yeah.
If somebody looks at you, they say, wow, she's just on this rocket ship path and nothing has gotten in her way and she's never encountered any problems whatsoever. In your career part of your life now, was there an occasion or two where you said, you know what, I want that do-over if I could get it. It didn't go the way I wanted. And how do you handle, I mean, you clearly matured a lot in your thinking from that exam getting into college day.
Right.
But now today, as a professional woman and you're on your track, there's been some bumps, I suspect. Can you name one that stands out, and what did you do?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Again, they happen all the time. I think I'll share two.
Sure.
Because one was earlier on in my career, and I don't think I had the tools that I think I have now. And then one that happened more recently and how I approached them differently. So the first one that comes to my mind is, I had joined Procter & Gamble. And I would say, like I said, P&G is an amazing company, but it's highly competitive, right? They hire some of the best people out there, which I was, again, super honored and grateful to be part of that group. But it's an up or out organization. There is very strict sort of restrictions around performance evaluations and bell-shaped curves that people are forced in. So it becomes very emotional, very mental sort of high stress, I would say, highly competitive. And in many ways, your performance and like your ratings are determining like what's going to be of your career, you know, whether you're going to get promoted, whether you're going to get like great projects and all of that. And I remember I was maybe like 2 or 3 years in, and, you know, I thought I was totally crushing it, rocking, and, you know, thought I really deserved the sort of top rating, if you will. And then got my performance evaluation, and it wasn't that, right? It was more of like an average, let's say like average rating. And again, because so many women, it's like the fixed mindset that Carol Dweck talks about, learn at a young age to be perfect,
right?
To have the best grades, to do the best that you can always. Like, well, it works great in school sometimes. In the real world, it's just not quite like that.
Right.
And when things don't go our way, like in this case, I got the performance evaluation that my rating wasn't what I expected. I take that as a massive hit, right? In terms of, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to make it, right? Like the story starts to sort of creep in. And not only like it crushed me in the moment, I kind of allowed that to completely change my outlook and my mindset at work. Like all of a sudden, I was mad I didn't get the rating. Then I didn't get the job I wanted next. I didn't get the project that I wanted next. And it just kind of became this spiral of like negativity. And it had been brewing in my head for months, Dan. And I had like no idea. Like I was becoming like a different person. I was so mad and angry and frustrated and just miserable. And I had no idea until a mentor and my leader at the time pulled me aside into his office, and he goes like, Tatiana, what's going on? And of course I was like angry and defensive at the world. So I'm like, nothing is going on. Like, what are you talking about? I got mad at him for asking me the question. And he's like, you know, I haven't heard you laugh in months. And I'm like, oh my God. And if you know me, like I'm insanely
for you,
loud.
laughter comes so easily.
Yeah, I laugh all the time.
Yeah,
and like when we used to work in a real office building, like you could hear me down the hallway. I was probably like obnoxious. I was so loud in laughter. And he was right, but I had no idea. And I remember my worst nightmare, I started crying in his office, right? Because I was so mad at myself that I had no awareness of how bad things had become. And he's like, it's okay, Tatiana, don't worry about it. I'm like, what do you mean? You know, don't worry about it. This is awful. And I'm like, what do I do? And he, like a Jedi master mentor, very peacefully said, he's like, it's just all about awareness. You have to learn how to become aware of your mindset. And when you catch yourself in more of the negativity, bias, and thinking, like, how do you just catch yourself earlier and then shift it, right? And that started my deep passion for learning about mindset and how to manage our mindset. And so that I don't allow setbacks or failures or things that don't go the way that I think they should to have such a negative impact in my life. And one of the biggest tools I've learned is really to approach it from a growth mindset standpoint and then become aware of the story that I'm telling myself about what happened. I call novelas because I'm Brazilian. It's a story and it's very dramatic, right? Like the inner chatter in our heads become like this, crazy novella with like multiple, people going crazy,
right.
full of passion and drama. And what, I guess I learned is that I'm not the victim of the novella, I'm the author of the novella, and I can change the story that I'm telling myself about that experience or the failure or whatever it is that has happened. So, fast forwarding to another like situation that happened when I was at Disney, that, I was applying and being considered for a promotion and I didn't get it. And I was super upset about it. And, I immediately was catching, right, the negative version of the novella or the story, and just practicing again, like, if this is a story I want to tell myself about what happened, like what is it that I want to take away, right? And for me, in this case, like, I was being considered for a vice president role, and I had only been the director for a couple of years, and I made it to the final round, and I was doing really well, and they gave me some performance, like, so it's like, but it's to me about, again, just managing our mindset or the stories that we're telling ourselves, and in doing that, really embracing that growth mindset, so that we can grow, move forward, and really own, like, what the story that we're going to tell ourselves, because the stories we tell ourselves really become, I believe, like, our experiences and how we really, like, live our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really so informative. And for our viewers, I think most people would understand being even considered for vice president at Disney is rare air. But at the time, you can't get through that, well, it didn't work out yet.
Right.
Even though objectively, and I think that's what I'm hearing in your theme here, is objectively, you can talk yourself off the ledge, but in the moment, and for sometimes that moment lasts a few months, it can be tough. And so I think, what our friends who are watching this would, I hope, take away sounds really encouraging, is that it is possible to sort of reframe and reset and keep moving, and try to step out of yourself and start rewriting the novella a little bit, the way it ought to be, with a clinical lens. So thanks for sharing that. That's really terrific. Those are always tough things to talk about, but not surprisingly, you handled it with your characteristic smile and laughter.